For the second design, I'm going to show you how to create a contemporary design in this case, in an oval dish. And you can also make it in something a little bit smaller, or even a little bit taller, but that's got some good length to it. So also a rectangular dish would be perfect. Now for this we're going to do this in foam, and I'm using this black foam called Oasis Noir, and it basically, the darkness of the foam, the colour of the foam, means it sort of disappears a little bit. Now again, for this you can use your secateurs, or otherwise, if you prefer, with a pair of scissors. I'm going to use a knife, and I've got this nice kitchen knife, which I will show you in 2 ticks. What I'm going to do first of all, you can see I've put the dish, or the foam in the dish, but it's very still blocky and it's got the same level. So I'm just going to do a little bit of creative sculpting and basically just cut out a few bits. And what this does is it makes it a little bit of a more organic shape, because what you tend to find quite often is that you end up with an arrangement, and what you end up seeing is a block shape that supports it. So I'm just cutting some of those corners away and making it a bit wavy. One of the beautiful materials I found before was this lovely piece of hawthorn, and it's just coming out, and I think it's just such a beautiful shape that I think that's going to basically start me off. And I'm going to use it so that it comes slightly towards me and that I show off the line of the material, and this is how it was growing on the tree. So I think that sort of suits it quite well. It almost looks a little bit like Ikebana, Japanese flower arranging like that. I'm just going to chop that, and I'm going to cut this, because I'm putting it in an odd angle, see there, into a sort of V shape. And that means that when it sits in the foam, it won't start twisting. So it sits nice and secure. So let's put that in, push it in nice and deep. So you can see how that sits there. It looks very elegant, I think. And now immediately I'm going to start using a little bit of bark, because the bark will create a nice contrast against the blossom. So fortunately on this one I have a nice little bit sticking off the bottom, and so let's push that in there. Try and make sure it's straight, and I'm then going to break this one down a bit so I can create a little bit of difference in height with the 2 pieces of bark. And you can see that that creates a nice, as it really force this in. There we are. You can see that, yeah, it creates a nice little background. The good thing about this also, and this is always, I tend to think it's very important with especially contemporary design, you can see this kind of depth appearing, because this sits so far forward and this sits behind it. So it doesn't, what we don't want is for the arrangement to become flat. If you find that it's a little bit wobbly, then you can cheat. I always like to do a little bit of cheating, and I'm going to make this arrangement front facing. So what I'm going to do is just stick a little stick, and I'm going to push that down, but I'm moving this slightly forward so that that stays in place a little bit better. Then let's see, we're going to go back to some gorgeous horse chestnut. Actually, I think I'm going to change my mind, because otherwise you'll think you'll need horse chestnut for everything. This is a little bit of cherry blossom, and you can see that the flowers have come off now, but I don't mind that. It's still really pretty, and it's got this lovely little shoot of leaves, foliage. So I'm going to use that a little bit on the other side. Again, upright. And I've got a few stems of this, so I'm going to make a little cluster. And grouping things together is quite a nice, is a really, well, actually very effective way of showing off the beauty of the different materials. If you mix them all up, then the identity of every material gets lost. But you can see how that makes, just if you had just the one, it's a little bit out there on its own, and if you start mixing it with other things, you lose the identity. So just a little group there, and because there's some weight here, this kind of counterbalances that. Then, let's see what other, some little movement bits, and I had this lovely piece of ivy, and seeing as we've got this, already got this nice movement, I think what I'm going to do is to have a little play and see whether we can accentuate that movement on this side. So, got a nice little cut, and then push that into the foam, and then I'm just going to swirl this around, and I think what I'm going to try and do is just by twisting the end around the stem, that sort of holds that nicely in place, and it looks as if it's just grown there in a way. And so I've got already sort of three main things in there, which gives quite a bit of filling. And what I'm going to do now is to use some foliage, because I've got a lot of foam here and I need to cover that up. And a nice way to do that, you can see, hopefully I'll try and do it from the front so you can see, is to use some ivy leaves. And what that does perfectly is create a contrast, because you've got that little sort of smooth texture of these leaves, and you can see I'm just layering them on top of each other against that sort of spiky texture of the twig, and it kind of creates a nice little, so you can see really clearly that beautiful branch just there. Now, people are always worried about, you can see these spaces here, there's these sort of holes and areas, and people are always very tempted to fill everything up, but actually you don't need to. You can keep things quite simple, and that's what I do intend to do. Give this a little try here. It's also quite natural. This is basically just some iris that was growing in my garden, and the iris haven't come out yet. And again, it's a nice different shape, and it's a nice sort of strong upright, but it's sort of in keeping with all the other material. So I'm just going to add that there. And then I think I'm going to have it chopped in this lovely moss here in my old hanging basket. And this is just a nice big lump of moss, and I'm just taking the top off. So I just get this little carpet. And what this does, it creates almost like a little resting point for your eye. A little bit of calm. Very zen-like, a bit of moss. And I'm going to repeat that on the other side. And again, just tuck that in front there, so that you get the difference in textures between the smooth of the ivy leaves and then that sort of furry texture from the moss. These were these lovely tree buds that I found earlier. I think they're just, if they weren't on a stem like that, you'd think they were something exotic. And these I'm going to use almost as what I would say a focal material. And a focal material is where you're eye hones in on. So that's something that's used short in this case and draws your eye into the center of the arrangement. And you can kind of see how that works there by the material sort of honing in down onto this, which is smack bang at the center of this. You can see because all the stems, you know, that's the main blossom stem goes towards this point, the cherry blossom comes up from it, the ivy comes sort of into it, so it's a nice focal area there. So yes, I was talking about the nice lichen twigs that are around. Maybe just, again, to add a little bit of interest, I'm just going to add. You see, in a way I'm creating more spaces than more empty space. So you can see there's space here, there's space there, there's a space there. Yeah, there's space here. But actually those spaces are really positive because they allow the material to show itself off. Yeah, if you were to fill all that, you lose all those beautiful movements of how the material's grown. That's really mostly what I've done. I've mostly sort of imitated what's going on in Mother Nature in terms of how the materials grow. And then add another few ivy leaves here at the back. Again, that covers up some of my foam. So let's just put a few of those there. And it links the different sides of the arrangement because you can see, same as with the moss. Yeah, I've repeated the leaves here and here, in the moss there and there. Okay, now, what I did find was these little grape hyacinths. And I think I could use these as just a beautiful little, almost finishing touch. Now, yeah, normally I think you sort of look at that and you think, oh, it would look great against there. But I don't really want to interfere with this beautiful blossom, so I'm going to move them over to here, I think. Now, grape hyacinths are not the easiest of flowers to push into foam. And I'm going to give it a go. Now, when you push them in, I will show this in a moment close up because I will show it for a moment in here. And this is always a great way, actually, a great little tip for when you do flowers, because what people tend to do is they tend to do this and they hold the flower upward of the bottom of the stem and push it in, and quite often what happens is the stem breaks. So when you push it in, if you put your fingers right close to the foam and then just feed the stem down, you can push it in. I can push that all the way to the bottom of the foam. There we are, without breaking the stem, because you can see that's how far it goes. And again, here I'm letting Mother Nature guide me because muscari grow always in little clumps. So I'm going to do the same. I'll just put them at slightly different heights, again to create a bit of interest. Like so. Right, let's move that out of the way. Now, the question is, do I need anything else? I think maybe something a little bit towards the back. So, This is a lovely hydrangea. This is one of those hydrangeas that grows against the wall, it grows up the wall. And it's already come out in leaf and is perfect for using in arrangements. And this one, I'm going to do a little bit of cutting. I'm going to get rid of that long bit there. So I've just got that lovely little bit left. I'm going to have that coming from behind the wood. You can see again, just that little bit there. And again, you can see space. So the space is really important. Don't be tempted to fill in all the spaces. It's always tempting, but what you end up with is a little bit chaos. I think you end up with chaos. So yeah, try to restrain yourself. Now, the thing is, you can carry on and on, and you can put lots and lots and lots and lots of materials in, but you do have to remember that it's not always necessary. I found some lovely ivy, especially this sort of small leafed, quite dense ivy. So I'm going to just add a few bits of those just to cover up a little bit more of the foam. Because even though you can see already that you don't see very much of the foam, but what you do see is, I don't know, it sort of gives the game away a little bit, and it's obviously not natural, and especially seeing as we're using all these naturally foraged materials, it's probably good just to see if we can cover that a little bit. Now, just check. Automatically, I think when you use all these natural materials, it's almost impossible not to have quite a lot of detail in there. You can't avoid it. But that's why, again, that space is so important. Because without the space, it becomes messy. A little bit there. You can see there's all different heights in here, and the different heights go not in a stepping way, they go all over the place. So you get all these different levels with the different heights of the materials right down to the base. And you can see that, yeah, our sort of core or our focal area being here in this area. So to connect the highest point to the actual dish. The other thing that I would say is important, obviously I've said that a few times, is the space between the materials. So that you can see this beautiful line with the ivy. Yeah, this beautiful twig is just here on its own. Oh, it's become a bit smaller. Yeah, the three stems of the cherry blossom, the iris leaves, the nice textured wood or the bark, and again, having this material, this hydrangea towards the back, yeah, you create space and you allow the materials to show themselves off effectively. So, yeah, I hope that gives you a little bit of inspiration to make your own. And yeah, don't worry if the materials are not the same, if your arrangement turns out completely different. Start off with your choice material first and then build around it so that you hopefully create your own masterpiece. Fancy having another go at this or doing something different, and then let me know your feedback. It would be great to receive some pictures of your arrangements, which you can send to me at my email address, which is hunts@huntsflowers.co.uk. So please let me see your masterpieces and hopefully see you again.